escalation of tensions between Israel and Palestine, and this conflict is only escalating, with the Gaza Strip launching massive rocket barrages at southern and central Israel, targeting major cities including Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in Israel. At least one person has died in the attack. The military has confirmed a number of terrorists have infiltrated Israeli territory. The defense forces have declared a state of war. The military said it has started an operation targeting Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. The IDF and Israel police have asked the residents stay at home, and shelters across the country have been opened for civilians. Israeli journalist Nurit Ben is joining us live from Tel Aviv in Israel. Tel Aviv also has come under attack. We are concerned about the situation right now. Nurit, hope you and your loved ones are doing well. Talk to us a little about what really has happened then. First of all, how is this sudden escalation being explained?
Well, I don't think there actually is an explanation this far, because as you pointed to in your previous report, the feeling at the moment is actually one of quite a bit of chaos, which is what's most concerning about what is happening this morning. Let me take your viewers back to the beginning. As of about 6:30 a.m. this morning, that's exactly 3 hours ago now, Israel has been under a surprise and really unprecedented coordinated attack from Hamas, the militant group that runs the Gaza Strip, and potentially other factions. That remains to be seen. Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is beginning to meet with his security chiefs right now as we speak, preparing for what will undeniably be days, if not weeks or more, of conflict. So really, as you mentioned, it began with an extremely heavy wave of rocket fire on southern Israeli communities. Those are communities that are right across the border from the Gaza Strip, all the way up to central Israel, to Tel Aviv, where I am now, and also even Jerusalem. And that has been continuing. I mean, here in Tel Aviv, every few minutes I can hear an Iron Dome interception. Iron Dome is Israel's missile defense system. We constantly hear it being intercepting incoming rockets. So that rocket fire has been basically continuous ever since, almost 3 hours, as you mentioned, thousands of rockets fired towards Israeli communities. But that's only one part of the story here. And the other really crucial piece mentioned is the infiltrations. Basically, the understanding is there are multiple infiltrations of dozens of Hamas terrorists who made their way in various forms, still yet to be confirmed, from the Gaza Strip over into neighboring Israeli communities. There are unconfirmed reports of Israeli casualties, of suspected hostage situations, kidnappings, of firefights in Israeli towns. And it's important to note that Hamas, traditionally and historically, one of its biggest goals is kidnapping Israeli civilians and soldiers. There have been prisoner exchanges in the past over that. So that is something that is always a huge concern in cases like this, certainly in one where there are infiltrations to this degree. But this is where I do want to be careful, because this is, of course, a moving story, quite chaotic, as I mentioned, and there is a lot of unconfirmed information out there. For example, there are unconfirmed dramatic images of civilians being executed by Hamas in Israel South, of a pickup truck, a sort of Jeep, wandering around an Israeli community, firing machine guns in all directions, of armed terrorists making their way through an Israeli neighborhood. These are unprecedented scenes, and as I mentioned, yet to be fully confirmed. On the sort of military and defense establishment side, the Israeli defense minister has approved a broad call-up of military reservists. Residents, of course, of those southern communities are being told not to leave their homes, and the security cabinet is set to meet in a few hours. I expect that will be a very long meeting. So certainly the beginning of something where nobody knows where it will end, unprecedented, and it appears to be quite a surprise for Israel.
Shelters have been set up, and the army has asked everybody to take these shelters, not step out of their homes. These are residential colonies that have been bombed. What's the information coming in about the kind of protection that the army can offer to the civilians, at least? Because you did mention that Hamas has, in fact, spoken about the fact, and they do this often, is kidnap, members of the army, essentially. But what about the civilians here? Yes.
Well, so there are two parts to that question. One is in terms of rocket fire. So let me just kind of paint the picture for you and your viewers of what it's like to be under rocket fire for those Israeli southern citizens. they are just a few kilometers from the Gaza Strip. So generally they have 10 seconds or less from when a siren sounds in their community to get to a shelter. It's very little time, especially when you think of the elderly or families with young children. Many people do have bomb shelters in their homes. Not everybody does. So that means they have about 10 seconds to get to safety. And as we've seen images of direct hits of rocket fire in southern communities. So certainly, you can't understate the threat there. In terms of the infiltration and what the Army can provide, what kind of protection, I think that is yet to be seen, because as I mentioned, this level of infiltration, we've seen them before in previous conflicts, but to have what appears to be multiple infiltrations of terrorist groups in multiple communities at the same time, that we have not seen before to this degree. And it's not quite clear yet if the military has a handle on it in terms of being able to protect residents. That is something that's happening now. But clearly, if this was a surprise, as it appears to be, the protection is not the level that residents would hope for.
Be with us. In fact, Nurit, my colleague Gaurav Sawant is also now joining us, and Gaurav would like to take a couple of questions from you. Gaurav, you can go ahead.
During the timing of these attacks, the protests, the Yom Kippur War anniversary, is this something like a multi-pronged offensive from multiple sides and multiple state actors or non-state actors being involved in this? Is that the apprehension?
I think if I heard you correct about multiple actors being involved, I think that's always the fear. Putting aside the timing and this specific event, the fear in every sort of round of conflict between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip is other groups being pulled into it. Just in Gaza, if you look only at Gaza, there's Hamas that runs the Gaza Strip and also Islamic Jihad, a rival terrorist group. So there is, on that front, there is the question always of how much Islamic Jihad will get involved. I think that there's no question that they will. They have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain by getting involved in this case. Then there's the question of the West Bank, not run by Hamas, of course, but there is a strong Hamas support there. And there's always a concern that in the West Bank, which is a completely sort of different situation, that there will be some involvement, that there will be terror attacks and so on. Already, Mohammed Deif, who's the military leader of Hamas in Gaza, who's been in hiding for decades, has called on Arab citizens of Israel to take up arms against their neighbors in Israel. They're calling on the West Bank to get involved. And then the last part of that is all the way up in the north. If you're looking at the map of Israel, up north, of course, is Lebanon and Hezbollah, the militant group that is largely supported and funded by Iran. They have not yet gotten involved, as far as I understand, but that is always a concern, that if a conflict can escalate, very widely, that will happen. And then we'll be talking about not just what we've seen today, which is quite extreme so far, but a conflict on multiple fronts.